So, you have questions, but they're questions that you haven't asked because either they're uncomfortable or complicated or even just a little bit risky. Questions that most people don't ask because they just don't want to go there. But in this podcast, we do want to go there because we believe that our God isn't threatened by our honest questions. We believe that our God has a lot of answers that are worth wrestling over. And so in this podcast, we want you to bring your questions. Let's look at them together. Let's lean in. And let's go there. What's going on, land of podcasting, and welcome to another episode of what we love to call in this podcast studio and at this church, Let's Go There. I'm your host, Ben Pukas, and normally, you guys are probably used to this, it's a little bit of the Pavlov effect. Usually I'll say something like, I'm joined in the podcast studio, as always, with my friend, the myth, the man, the legend himself, Russ the Bus Williams. But it's hard for me to say. I can't even believe I'm going to say it. I never thought this day would come. I am not in the studio with anybody today. I'm actually in the studio by myself. Russ and I broke up. No, I'm just playing. Russ and I did not break up, but what we need to understand about Russ is that he is a dad of two, both under the age of 6 years old. And so today he is actually being a stay-at-home dad and wasn't able to make it into the podcast studio. And so to say my heart is aching and my heart hurts is an understatement. It's always fun. Just on the other side of that camera, literally where I'm pointing right there, Russ is always sitting with his headphones on, making sure all the technology is working. And so if the technology breaks, we can just blame Russ for being a dad and taking care of his responsibilities. We don't even have some of the lights on because if I'm honest with you, I don't know actually how to do that. And so this is actually one of those episodes that I'm recording that I'm going to get done recording it after 25 minutes of recording, and it may not even be recording to the memory card. So this may be something that I'll be doing for a second time. And if I'm doing it for the second time, I'm going to be incredibly frustrated. But welcome to another episode of Let's Go There. We need Russ the Bus so much, but we're going to persevere without him. And so today, what we do on this podcast, whether Russ is here or not, is we like to answer questions that keep you up at night, questions that you're able to send in. And today's question is, what do I do when I don't know what to do? It's one of those questions that's a little bit of a tongue twister. And if I'm honest, it's one of those questions that can seem a little bit silly in the moment. If you're not in a season of uncertainty, or if you have never been in a season of uncertainty, which I don't really know if that's possible if you're listening to this podcast. If you're listening, it's probably because you're in an uncertain situation or have a question that makes you feel a little bit of uncertainty. But it's a question that if you've never really been in that season, it seems a little silly. But if you've ever been in a season where it feels like that the lights have been turned off, you don't know what to do, you wake up in the morning, you don't know what to do or where to go, it's actually something that resonates with people a lot. It's actually a question that's less of an intelligence, in the mind kind of question, and it's more of an emotional. It makes an emotional tie to us because so often when we hear a question like that, what do I do when I don't know what to do? It takes us back to a situation, and it brings back all of those feelings, all of that fear, all of that uncertainty. You know, we've all been in those situations. I guarantee it, whether it's a career decision if we're older, or if it's a decision of whether I need to get into a relationship or get out of a relationship, or whether it's, what do I need to do? What college do I need to go to? What major do I need to apply for? Maybe it's a big major life transition. And so often we are wondering, like, God, I want to know what to do. God, I'm asking what to do. If you could just write it in the clouds, if you could write it on the wall, if you could just somehow send me a text message to tell me exactly what it is that you want me to do and when you want me to do it and how you want me to do it, God, that would be great. But so often that's not how God works. And before, we've talked about the idea in the podcast over the last few weeks, is we've talked about the idea that so often, like in my opinion and in my theology, I don't think God has a specific one-line plan for our lives. What I mean by that is I don't think God necessarily, when we're born, is going to say, hey, you're going to do this one thing. You're going to date this one person. You're going to go to this one college. You're going to marry this one person. You're going to live in this one city. You're going to have this job during this time and this job during the next time. And if you don't do those things exactly right, you're living outside of my will. And what we're going to talk about in this podcast is, and what we talked about in podcasts before is, man, we have to stop searching for the will of God in the small when God has very obviously in his word given us his revealed will. And so then why would God reveal a hidden will if we're not even willing to be faithful with the revealed will? But today we're going to move past that, knowing, yes, that God does have a revealed will for our lives, that his word is true, that when he tells us to abstain from sexual immorality, he means abstain from sexual immorality. And I do believe so often God is walking with us and he's going, what do you want to do? But there's an element, and I've talked to so many of you, and you're like, I just want to please God. I don't want to make a wrong decision. And yes, I do believe that God has not a one-line plan for my life, but I do believe there are better decisions to make than others. And so what do we do when we wake up in the morning and we don't know what to do? How are we supposed to be faithful in that? And if I'm honest, this is one of those podcasts that I kind of ran away from a little bit. If you've been at fellowship this past semester, in May, I was able to talk about what God has been teaching me, and this is one of the things that God is currently right now teaching me. And if I'm honest, I kind of avoided this topic a little bit because I feel like I'm still in the middle of it. Over the last couple of years, I really do feel like I've been in the dark more than I have been in the light. I have been more frustrated with uncertainty than feeling confident with the certainty that's in my life. And it's a really hard thing because it feels like most days I wake up and it feels like someone has just dropped me into a dark cave and I don't know what God is doing. I don't know what tomorrow looks like, let alone, I don't even know what tomorrow looks like. I don't even know what today looks like. I don't even know what this afternoon looks like. I don't know what I'm walking into. I don't know what kind of email that I'm going to get. God, what is it that you want me to do? Because obviously what I'm doing right now is not working. God, will you just reveal to me what it is that you're doing, because I feel really frustrated. And I think I've talked about before on this podcast, and I think a lot of us are this way. I've called myself a control freak. And I believe there's an element where I really do want to be in control and I want my hands to be on the steering wheel. But I think so often it's not necessarily that I want to be in control. I think if I'm honest, it's less of me wanting to be in the driver's seat, and it's more of me just saying, God, just tell me where we're going. Like the staff knows this here at Fellowship. I say to them all the time, please, just no surprises. There's not a lot I feel like that you're going to tell me in the moment you messed up or you made a decision or you're going to be doing something that's crazy and out of the box that's going to surprise me and make me off my rocker a little bit. Like you can tell me just about anything and I can roll with just about any punch because I don't feel like I'm being surprised left and right. And sometimes in my life, I feel like God is surprising me left and right. And I'm not only not in the driver's seat, but I'm in this dark cave and we're going 100 miles an hour and I don't know where we're going. And what I think I've realized in this question, and I think what we need to realize in a lot of the questions we have about faith, it's a lot less about the what. Like all of these questions, it's what. Like, what do I do in this situation? What do I do in that situation? What do I do in the situation where I'm over here? That's what we're struggling with all the time. You know what I'm saying? But I think the question is less about what, and it's more about why. God, why is this something that I'm struggling with? Where are you? Why, if you have all of the power, if you are all-knowing, why aren't you letting me into the plan? Like, if you had the ability to do it, then why don't you do it? And I think that is something that we struggle with a lot. Hear me say this, a lot in our faith. You know, I think skeptics all the time, they're coming back and forth with the God of the universe, and they're saying, man, if God is all-powerful, if God is able to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, if he's able to take away evil, then why doesn't he? If God's able to light the path for us, then why doesn't he? And what that can lead us to a lot of times is that can really lead us to feeling like God doesn't care. Man, if God cared, he'd let me in on this. If God cared, he'd at least light a little bit so I even know where I am. He would help me understand even what to do in my day today. And what I want to talk about today is I want to talk about something that God has taught me in this. The control freak, the guy that just wants to know what's going on, and it feels like I'm just in a dark cave. And one of the ways that God has been able to teach me in this and where we're going to be spending our time today is actually in Psalm 119, 105. And it's a scripture, it's super short, but the things that the Lord has been able to do in the midst of Psalm 119, it's completely and radically changed my life. And I pray that you're able to see this as well. And in Psalm 119, it says, your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. There's two different things that we see here. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. And so there's two different things that the Lord likes to do sometimes. Sometimes what he does is he lights the path for us. Sometimes there's these big headlights and they're shining forward and we see 20 steps ahead and it's awesome. And those are the seasons of my life where it feels like I know where I'm going, that I feel the most stable and I feel the most secure. But if I'm honest with you, those seasons are few and far between, because it feels like the season that's actually more common is not the season where the entire path is lit for me. The season that's more common for me is where your word is a lamp to my feet. It feels like the only light that I have is just enough to see where my feet are, just enough to see the next step. I don't know not only do I not know what's 20 steps ahead, I don't know what's 5 steps ahead. I don't even know it's 2 steps ahead. And I get frustrated. And it feels like that God is only enlightening me in where I am. And it can be incredibly frustrating that it feels like he's only given me enough light for one more step. And the question is why? Again, it's not what, it's why. Why would God do that? If he has the ability to light the entire path, to tell me exactly where I am and how I got there and where we're going, then why doesn't he do it? And I want to take us to John chapter 1 for a second, because Psalm 119, remember, says, your word is a lamp to my feet and your word is a light to my path. And I think we over-spiritualize things. We're like, okay, God's word is a light. So I just need to read God's word all of the time. And it becomes this religious thing. It becomes this legalistic thing. And we're reading. And it feels like sometimes it's saying that if the more we read, the more our light's going to be enlightened for us. And if you've ever done that, like I have, we read, and the light still stays just enough to see the next step. And when you look at John chapter 1, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And it says, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among men. The Word, when it talks about the Word, it's not the written words on the page. The Word is Jesus, the Son of God. And so when it says your word is a lamp to my feet, Jesus is the lamp to our feet. Jesus is a light to our path. And so it's less about this legalistic ritual where we flex our spiritual muscles as tight as we possibly can, and it's more about a relationship. I mean, that's faith. That's a relationship with Jesus. That's what it means to follow Jesus. That's why so often, very rarely am I ever going to tell people that I'm a Christian. I don't like the word Christian because it really is just like what it shows up on a census, and it's something that people affiliate with. I would not call myself a Christian. I would call myself a follower of Jesus, because I don't think I follow a religion. I believe I follow a person. It's less about a religion and it's more about a relationship. And we see even in the Old Testament when it says your word is a lamp to your feet and a light to your path, it's talking about like Jesus, the Son of God, that's not even been revealed yet, that hasn't even been made manifest to people yet in the Old Testament. What it's pointing back to is that there's this relationship that God wants us to be in. And that is a beautiful thing, because what we see in this, and this is what God has been teaching me, and it's been absolutely blowing my mind. The purpose of the will of God, listen to me say this, this is so important. The purpose of the will of God is so little about information, and it's all about intimacy. Like, I think about this cave illustration for a second. And I think I said in the beginning that, sometimes it feels like God drops me into a cave and is like, figure it out, brother. And I'm like, I'm trying, but I don't know. And it's dark and I can't see the hand in front of my face. But let's go to Psalm 119 again. Your word is a lamp to my feet, which again, that's 90% of my life. Just enough light to see the next step. If you're in a cave, pitch black, you're so deep in a cave, there's no sunlight, there's no light, and there's a lamp that has low light. Where are you going to run to? That light source. Nobody likes to be in darkness. And what's crazy is light shines the brightest in the darkest places. And so when we are in those seasons of uncertainty, the light is still there. The light source is still there. And remember what the light source is. The light source is Jesus. And so I will say, in the darkest moments of my life, do you know where I cling the most to? I don't realize it in the moment because I'm frustrated and I'm complaining and I'm trying to tell God how he's messing up my life. But in those moments where it's the darkest, y'all, I'm the closest to Jesus. Because I think it's less, again, I think God's will for our life is less about the what and more about the who, is less about the where and more about the who. Like, it's like God's like, I'm less concerned about where you go, and I'm more concerned about how tightly you cling to me. And so in the darkest times, when the light is the dimmest, is the times where I'm clinging as closely as I possibly can to that light source, which is Jesus, and I'm finding intimacy with him in the midst of uncertainty. But then there are moments, hear me say this, because God is a good God. He enlightens the entire path. All of a sudden, the entire cave gets lit up, and it's like, whoa, this is crazy. This is awesome. And right after that season of darkness, I'm still clinging closely to Jesus. I'm still, tight with my man. I'm like, hey, you got me through that hard time. And then I'm walking with Jesus, and I'm next to the light source, and I'm not feeling as scared anymore. And I wander a little bit, but I still see him. But then inevitably what happens is I look down the path, and I look 14 steps ahead, and I'm like, oh, Jesus, look at that. That's pretty cool. Jesus is like, yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm like, I want that. Jesus is like, I know you're going to get that. I'm like, I want that now, though. And Jesus is like, no. Like, not yet. Stay close to me. You're going to get that good thing, but just not yet. And I'm like, okay. But like, why not? Like, that seems pretty cool. That's a cool relationship. That's a cool job. That's a cool place to be. Jesus is like, it is a cool place to be, but it's just not yet. And I'm like, okay, well, here's the deal, Jesus. Why don't we do this? Like, hear me out. What if I just scouted out a little bit ahead? Like, that seems really cool. That seems really neat. What if I just went out and scouted out to see what it's like? Okay, I'll be right back, Jesus. Don't worry about it. I'm just going to go look at it really fast. And then I'm wandering ahead of the light source, and I'm going to something that looks really good and something that we need to understand about really good things. Really good things are really good things, but when we go after really good things without the presence of Jesus and outside the will of God, those really good things cease to become really good things. In fact, they become ultimate things, and ultimate things become idols, and it becomes the opposite of a good thing and can actually lead us away from God. But I do that all the time. When I can see what's in front of my path and I'm not clinging to the light source, I leave the light source. I lead being led by Jesus, and I go after my own stuff. And you know what God does because he's good? Now all of a sudden I'm 8 steps ahead, and I'm going after that really good thing, and God's like, that's not a thing for you right now, bro. What he does is he turns the lights back off. And now all of a sudden I'm in pitch black. I can't see the hand in front of my face. And you know what I do because I'm sinful? I have the audacity to get mad at God. God, why'd you leave me? God, why did you forsake me? But was it Jesus who left me? Or was it me who left Jesus? It was me who left Jesus. Because Jesus is like, it's less about the where and the what, and it's more about the who. And so now it's pitch black again. But you know what he promises always? He promises always, whether it's just enough light to see in front of me or if it's enough light to see 20 steps ahead, there will always be light, because Jesus does promise, I will not leave you or forsake you. So now all of a sudden, I'm 8 steps ahead. I'm tripping over everything. I'm smashing my face against a bunch of rocks inside of this really dark and scary cave. And then you know what I do? I start looking for the light source again. And you know what? In the darkest of places, light shines the brightest. And I'm looking, and boom, there's a light. And it's like Jesus is inviting me, hey, stop running after your own devices and just cling to me. Because if you cling to me, and if I just give you enough light to see in front of you and you continue to cling to me, you will not miss out on your purpose. Like, sometimes good things become dangerous when we run outside of the will of God, and God in his kindness just turns the light off so we can come back to him. And so the question is this then. When we don't know what to do, that doesn't get rid of the fact that it's still dark. I get that. Like, I think hearing this knowledge, we're like, great, Ben, but that doesn't answer the original question that you gave. And I think I had to give the why so that we can understand the heart of God in the midst of all of this. It's really easy for us to start pointing fingers at God. Like, you did this and you did that and you left me. But really, in reality, when there's just enough light to see the next step, I don't view that as God's being sadistic and God just trying to like torture us and be like, here's a piece of steak and I'm just holding it in front of you and now I'm going to take it away. No, I actually view it as the kindness of God. Yeah, I'm not going to light the path. But do you know what you get when you don't see the next step? You get me. And I am so much better than anything in this life that you could ever want. And in fact, if you don't have me and you get all you want, actually what happens is you don't get anything good, and you're going to continue to be striving after the wind that Solomon talks about in Ecclesiastes. Like, everything is meaningless Why? Because we can be given everything we want in life, but if we don't have that intimacy and that relationship with our Creator and our Savior the way that we were designed to, we will never find satisfaction. And so the question is, when we're in this, what do we do? And it's a saying that I've said to myself. I've written on it. I've told friends about it, and it seems so simple, but it really is one of the hardest things that we'll ever do in this life. In seasons of uncertainty, just do the next faithful thing. Again, for me, I want to know the end of this. Where does this cave lead? And God's like, that's not for you to know, bud. Just do the next faithful thing. Like, what's the next faithful thing? And I believe this is the truth I want to leave us with today, is that if we just are faithful, if we're clinging to the light, and if we're following hard after God, if we're following hard after Jesus, then it's impossible for us to miss out on our purpose. The saying that I said, I don't even remember where I heard it, but it's a Pharaoh never misses his Joseph. Like, just think about the life of Joseph for a second. Talk about a life that was pretty miserable. I mean, the dude was sold into slavery by his 11 brothers. They actually were going to kill him at first. Like, no, let's sell him into slavery, which is a crazy thing to do to a brother no matter how much you hate him. So they sold him into slavery. He goes to Potiphar's house. He's a slave inside of Potiphar's house. He becomes this, like, the second in command of Potiphar's house. And then Potiphar's wife just had to ruin everything by trying to sleep with Joseph and accuses him of trying to lay with her. And Potiphar obviously believes his wife over the slave and throws him into prison under false pretenses. So the guy was sold into slavery because his brothers were jealous of him, which I get. Like, he's having dreams about, like, hey, one day you're going to bow down to me. That would frustrate me too if my sister kept doing that. I don't really think it's deserving of being sold into slavery. So it was an unjust punishment. And then he's falsely accused of laying with Potiphar's wife and is now in prison in a place where he doesn't belong. He shouldn't have been in the first place, and in prison for something that he never even did. But what does Joseph continually do? Wherever he goes, whether it's in Potiphar's house, whether it's in prison, Joseph was faithful to love God and love people. Joseph was faithful to his God. And what does God do time and time again? He continues to give him favor. And then all of a sudden, this cupbearer and this baker have these dreams, and Joseph interprets them, and he's like, baker, you're going to die. But the cupbearer, you're going to live, and you're going to be next to Pharaoh again. Just don't forget me. And the cupbearer, the dreams happen, the cupbearer gets restored, and what happens? The cupbearer forgets Joseph for years. Like, I can't imagine what that would be like, but what does he continue to do? He just does the next faithful thing. What does he do? He doesn't fix his eyes on the next step. He fixes his eyes on the light source. And right now, for years, the light source stayed in the same place. And so what does Joseph do? He stays in the same place, just like Moses did in the Israelites. There was a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. Where did they go when the pillar of fire and the cloud stayed? They stayed. Moses even said in Exodus chapter 34 that God's like, hey, I'm going to send my angel into the promised land. Like, the angel's going to take care of everything for you, but I'm going to stay here. Moses says, God, if you don't go with us, then I'm not going either. And so that's what Joseph does. He continues to be faithful. Then one day, Pharaoh has these dreams. The cupbearer goes, oh, right, there's this like Hebrew dude in this prison cell. Like, you should go talk to him. He interprets dreams. And Joseph gets taken out and interprets Pharaoh's dreams. And then he gets restored to the second in command, not only of the household, but of the nation of Egypt, which is the most powerful nation on earth. He's like the second most powerful man on earth. And what does that show us? For years and years and years and years, Joseph could have said, woe is me. Like, you're not enlightening my path. I feel like I'm in a place that I don't belong. But he just continued to be faithful. He continued to love God. He continued to love people. And because he was following hard after the God of the universe, because he was sticking closely to the light source, Joseph was never going to miss out on what God had for him. So what do we do? It sounds so simple, but it really is so hard. We just have to do the next faithful thing. We don't have to know 20 steps ahead. In fact, 20 steps ahead, the goal is that in 20 steps, it's just one faithful step at a time that leads us to the next thing. And the thing that leads us is not our own intuition. It's not our own giftedness. It's the light source. And when the light source stays put, we stay put. And when the light source moves, we move. We just continue to be faithful. And so maybe you've been listening to this podcast and you've just been there and being like, God, will you just illuminate the path? Will you create the floodlights? Like, why does it feel like I'm in the dark? And what I want to encourage us with as we finish out this podcast is I want to encourage you in this way. If you are listening to this and you are in the dark, I just want to say, maybe God's not holding out on you. Maybe what God's actually doing is he's putting you in the best place that you could possibly be. Because when it's the darkest, the light shines the brightest, and the light is the word, and the word is Jesus. And the darker it is, and I feel like in my life, the darkest it's been, the more closely I clung to my Savior and my friend, Jesus. So the thing that I need us to understand is uncertainty and darkness isn't God's absence. Hear this. It's often his invitation to stay close. And so that is the end of this podcast. I just want to encourage you, man, if you are in darkness, this isn't me just saying, suck it up, buttercup. It's still really hard. And it's completely okay to cry out to God in the midst of that darkness. But man, if you need any prayer, man, if you would just be able to reach out to us, reach out to Russ the Bus, even though he decided to be a responsible human being today. Reach out to the podcast via the link at the bottom of whatever platform you're on. Man, we would love to pray for you. We would love to be there for you. But that's the end of this podcast. And so we love you. I love you. Russ doesn't love you, apparently. But we can't wait to see you next week. But until then, Pukas and not Russ the Bus, out.